The morning sun slowly rose over the bustling city of Lagos, casting a golden glow across the busy streets of Surulere. Commercial buses honked impatiently, street vendors arranged their goods, and the aroma of freshly fried akara and bread drifted through the air. While the city woke up with hope, one man woke up carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Inside a modest one-bedroom rented apartment tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, Jeffrey Johnson sat silently on an old brown sofa. The apartment was small but neat. The sitting room served as both a living area and Jessica's study space. A small television rested on a wooden stand, while a worn ceiling fan struggled against the morning heat. The dining table had only 2 plastic chairs, and the curtains had begun to fade from years of use. On the center table lay a pile of unpaid bills. School fees, house rent, electricity, water. Jeffrey picked up the school fees invoice and sighed deeply. 185,000 Nigerian nairas, he murmured. Where am I supposed to get this kind of money? His eyes wandered to a framed family photograph on the wall. It had been taken 3 years earlier when life was beautiful. He, his wife, and little Jessica stood smiling in front of the restaurant they had built together. Now that smile was only a memory. 6 months ago, his marriage had collapsed. His ex-wife had filed for divorce after being manipulated by her boyfriend and a few greedy friends. She claimed Jeffrey was holding her back and demanded almost everything they owned during the settlement. By the time the court proceedings ended, Jeffrey had lost their family house, the restaurant they built together, 2 cars, and most of his savings. All he had left was his daughter. A gentle voice interrupted his thoughts. "Daddy." Jeffrey quickly wiped away the tears gathering in his eyes and forced a smile. Jessica walked out of the bedroom wearing her neatly ironed secondary school uniform. At 12 years old, she was intelligent, cheerful, and mature beyond her age. She carried herself with quiet confidence despite their struggles. "Good morning, Daddy." "Good morning, my princess." She bent slightly and hugged him. "You didn't sleep well again, did you?" Jeffrey chuckled. "Who told you?" "You were snoring like a generator that needs servicing." Jeffrey laughed. "Me? Snoring?" Jessica folded her arms dramatically. "Daddy, even the mosquitoes packed their bags and relocated." He burst into louder laughter. "So now mosquitoes are tenants? They've issued you a quit notice." Both father and daughter laughed until tears formed in their eyes. For a brief moment, every problem disappeared. Jessica walked into the tiny kitchen. The kitchen was simple, with a small gas cooker, a few neatly arranged pots, and a modest refrigerator that hummed softly in the corner. She returned carrying 2 cups of tea and slices of bread. Chef Jessica reporting for duty. Jeffrey saluted.
"Permission to eat, ma."
Permission granted. They laughed again. As they ate, Jessica noticed the school fees receipt lying on the table. Her smile faded. "Daddy. Are we going to school today?" Jeffrey looked at her calmly. "Of course. But they said yesterday that students owing school fees won't be allowed into class." "I know. And today is the final warning." "I know that too." Jessica lowered her head. "Maybe I should stay at home." Jeffrey immediately shook his head.
"No."
"But Dash."
"No, Jessica."
His voice became firm yet gentle. "You are going to school. What if they embarrass us again?" Jeffrey reached across the table and held her small hands. "My daughter, listen carefully." She nodded. "Never allow poverty to convince you that you don't deserve an education." Jessica looked into his eyes. "We may be struggling today, but this season will not last forever." She smiled faintly. "You always say that. And one day you'll remind me that I was right." Jessica squeezed his hand. "I believe you, Daddy." He smiled warmly. "That's my girl." After breakfast, Jeffrey picked up his old toolbox and slung it over his shoulder. Jessica raised an eyebrow. "Daddy, why are you carrying your mechanic box to school?" He grinned mischievously. "You never know. Maybe your principal's car will refuse to start." Jessica laughed. "If that happens, will my school fees disappear too?" "I'll negotiate." "Really?" "Of course. What will you tell him?" Jeffrey cleared his throat dramatically. Sir, in exchange for repairing your car, kindly erase all debts belonging to one beautiful, intelligent, future billionaire called Jessica Johnson. Jessica burst into uncontrollable laughter. Future billionaire? Yes. What about you? I'm retiring early. So I'll be the one feeding you? Exactly. Jessica pointed at him. See this man? They both laughed as they stepped outside. Jeffrey locked the apartment door and looked up at the bright morning sky. Deep inside, fear still lingered. He had no idea where Jessica's school fees would come from. But as always, he whispered a quiet prayer. Lord, I've done everything I can. The rest is in your hands. Holding Jessica's hand tightly, father and daughter began walking toward the bus stop, unaware that before the day was over, a chance encounter with a young woman named Temi would change the course of their lives forever. The morning traffic in Surulere had already reached its usual madness. Yellow Danfo buses competed for passengers. Tricycles squeezed through impossible spaces. Motorcycle riders weaved recklessly between vehicles, while impatient drivers leaned on their horns as if noise alone could clear the road. Jeffrey and Jessica hurried along the sidewalk. Jessica looked at the large school gate visible in the distance and checked the time on the small wristwatch her father had bought her on her last birthday. Daddy. We have only 15 minutes left. We'll make it. You said that yesterday. And we still got there. Barely. They both laughed as they continued walking. Suddenly, about 20 meters ahead, a sleek black Range Rover Velar rolled to a stop beside the road. The hazard lights flashed repeatedly. Several drivers sped past without stopping. The driver's door opened slowly. A young woman stepped out gracefully. She wore a fitted cream-colored designer trouser suit, elegant high heels, and expensive sunglasses. Her chocolate skin glowed beneath the morning sun, while her long wavy hair rested gently on her shoulders. Even in frustration, she looked effortlessly beautiful. She walked around the vehicle and lifted the bonnet. Oh no, not today, she sighed. She stared at the engine without knowing what she was looking at. One by one, passers-by glanced at her and kept walking. Some even slowed down, pretending to inspect the car while secretly admiring her beauty. One young man smiled confidently. Fine girl, don't worry. I can fix it. Temi folded her arms. Oh really? Yes. So what's wrong with it? The young man looked at the engine for a few seconds. It's, the engine. Temi raised an eyebrow. The engine. Yes. What part of the engine? The young man scratched his head. The inside part. Jessica couldn't hold herself anymore. She burst into laughter. The embarrassed young man adjusted his shirt. I was just testing you.
Temi smiled politely.
Thank you for your test. The young man quietly disappeared into the crowd. Jessica whispered to her father. He failed his own exam. Jeffrey struggled not to laugh. You too like trouble. Temi noticed them and smiled. Jeffrey stepped closer. Good morning. She returned the greeting. Good morning. May I have a look? She looked at him briefly. You know about cars? I know a little. She moved aside. Please. Jeffrey placed his old toolbox on the ground and leaned over the engine. His experienced eyes quickly scanned every part. He checked the battery terminals. He examined the wiring. Then he noticed a loose connector hidden beneath one of the engine covers. Jessica watched quietly. Temi folded her arms, observing every movement. Jeffrey tightened the connector, adjusted a few cables, and cleaned the battery terminals with a small wire brush from his toolbox. He smiled. I think we're good. Jessica looked worried. Daddy. Yes. Please hurry. He looked at her. If we're late today. She lowered her voice. They won't allow us into school. She hesitated before adding, especially students who haven't paid their school fees. Temi heard every word. She slowly turned toward Jessica. The little girl's face was filled with worry, but she tried to smile. Jeffrey gently touched her shoulder. Don't worry. I'm almost done. He closed the bonnet carefully. Then he smiled at Temi. Please try starting the engine. Jessica eagerly climbed into the driver's seat after Temmie nodded. Can I?
Temmie smiled.
Go ahead. Jessica inserted the key. She took a deep breath. Daddy. Yes. I hope it works. It will. She turned the key. Vroom. The engine came alive instantly, running as smoothly as if nothing had happened. Jessica clapped excitedly. It started. Temmie's eyes widened in surprise. You actually fixed it. Jeffrey wiped the grease from his hands with an old handkerchief. It was only a loose electrical connection. Temmie shook her head in amazement. I've been waiting here for almost 40 minutes. 3 people claimed they were mechanics. They all failed. Jeffrey smiled modestly. It wasn't anything serious. Temmie reached into her designer handbag. Please, let me pay you. Jeffrey immediately raised his hand. No, thank you. She looked surprised. You repaired my car. It's all right.
No.
I insist. He smiled. Helping someone doesn't always require payment. Jessica smiled proudly at her father. Temmie slowly withdrew the money. There was something different about this man. He looked poor. His clothes were simple. His shoes were old. Yet he carried himself with quiet dignity. Jeffrey picked up his toolbox. We should be going now. He held Jessica's hand. They had barely taken a few steps when Temmie called after them. Excuse me. Both turned around. I couldn't help overhearing your conversation. Jeffrey's smile faded slightly. It wasn't intentional. I know. She walked closer. Your daughter mentioned school fees. Jeffrey remained silent. Temmie looked directly into his eyes. Is everything all right? For a few moments, Jeffrey struggled to answer. Finally, he smiled. Life has simply been difficult. Temmie could see the pain hidden behind that smile. She bent slightly toward Jessica. What class are you in? JSS 2. And what's your name? Jessica Johnson. Beautiful name. Jessica smiled shyly. Thank you, Ma. Temmie looked back at Jeffrey. Please. Allow me to help. Jeffrey shook his head gently. I appreciate your kindness. But I don't want to be a burden. A burden.
Temmie smiled warmly. No.
I believe God brought you here this morning. He looked at her quietly. She continued, You fixed my car without asking for a single naira. The least I can do is return the kindness. Jessica looked hopefully at her father. Temmie pointed toward the SUV. Please. Let me take both of you to the school. Jeffrey hesitated. Jessica whispered softly, Daddy. He looked at his daughter, then back at Temmie. After a long pause, he nodded. Thank you.
Temmie smiled brightly.
My pleasure. As they entered the luxurious SUV, none of them realized that this ordinary morning encounter would become the beginning of a life-changing journey, one filled with love, laughter, betrayal, sacrifice, and unexpected second chances. The luxurious black Range Rover Velar pulled gently into the busy road, blending into the endless morning traffic of Lagos. Soft instrumental music played through the premium sound system, while the cool air conditioning filled the cabin with comfort. Jessica sat quietly in the back seat, her eyes wandering around the luxurious interior. The cream leather seats, the panoramic glass roof, the polished wooden dashboard, the digital touchscreen. Everything looked like something she had only seen on television. She carefully touched the soft leather seat. Her eyes became wide. She leaned forward and whispered to her father. Daddy. Jeffrey glanced at her. This chair is softer than our mattress. Jeffrey almost laughed. Jessica. She continued innocently. I'm serious. He lowered his voice. Behave yourself. Temmie smiled while concentrating on the road. I heard that. Jessica quickly covered her mouth.
I'm sorry. Temmie laughed.
Don't apologize. It made my morning. Jessica giggled. My classmates won't believe I entered this kind of car. Jeffrey smiled. They'll believe you. They'll say I edited the picture. All 3 burst into laughter. The tension inside the car slowly disappeared. After a few minutes of silence, Temmie spoke. So, what exactly do you do, mister? Jeffrey. Jeffrey Johnson. She nodded. What do you do? I repair electrical appliances, generators, and sometimes vehicles. You learned all that yourself? Mostly. I also used to manage restaurants. Temi briefly looked at him. You managed restaurants? Jeffrey smiled faintly. I actually built one. You built one? Yes. What happened? The smile on his face slowly disappeared. He looked outside the window. Losing a business is painful. Losing your family at the same time is something else. Temi remained quiet. She could sense he wasn't a man who enjoyed talking about his pain. Jessica quietly answered for him. My daddy built one of the busiest restaurants in Lagos. Temi looked surprised. Really? Jessica nodded proudly. He used to wake up at 4 every morning. He hardly slept. He taught all the workers himself. He even created some of the recipes. Temi looked at Jeffrey with growing curiosity. You owned a successful restaurant? He nodded slowly. Together with my wife. Jessica continued. They were both happy. But after some time, she stopped. Jeffrey gently interrupted. That's enough, Jessica. Jessica lowered her head.
I'm sorry, Daddy. Temi understood.
There was more to the story. Much more. Traffic came to another standstill. Street hawkers surrounded the vehicles. One little boy approached Jeffrey's window carrying bottled water. Oga, pure water. Jeffrey smiled apologetically. Not today. Another woman walked over with meat pies.
Fine meat pie.
Jessica stared at them hungrily. Jeffrey noticed. Without saying anything, he searched his pocket. Only one crumpled 100 naira note remained. He looked at it quietly, then slowly returned it to his pocket. Jessica pretended not to notice. Instead, she smiled brightly. Daddy, I'm not hungry. Temi saw everything through the rearview mirror. She said nothing, but her heart became heavy. A few minutes later, the traffic cleared. The SUV continued toward Jessica's school. Temi finally broke the silence. Can I ask something personal? Jeffrey smiled politely. You may. What really happened to your marriage? For a long moment, Jeffrey remained silent. Then he spoke calmly. My wife believed the wrong people. They convinced her I was holding her back. They told her she deserved someone richer. Jessica quietly wiped a tear from her eye. They divorced. Temi looked at Jeffrey. You didn't fight for your marriage? He smiled sadly. You cannot force someone to stay. If love has already packed its bags, arguments won't bring it back. Temi's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. His words touched something deep inside her. Soon, the SUV stopped in front of Royal Crest International College, one of the respected private secondary schools in Surulere. Students wearing blue and white uniforms hurried through the gates. Parents dropped off their children. Security guards stood at the entrance checking identification cards. Jessica looked nervous. Daddy. They may send me home today. He squeezed her shoulder gently. Let's trust God. They stepped out of the SUV. Temi followed behind them. As Jeffrey and Jessica approached the school gate, the security guard stretched out his hand. Good morning. Good morning. He looked at Jessica. Your name? Jessica Johnson. The guard checked a list on his clipboard. His expression changed.
I'm sorry.
The principal instructed us not to admit students with outstanding school fees. Jessica lowered her head in embarrassment. Some students walking past began whispering. She's the girl owing school fees. I heard they warned her yesterday. Jeffrey forced a smile. Officer, please allow me to see the principal. The guard shook his head politely. I'm sorry, sir. Those are the instructions. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. She held her father's hand tightly. Temi, who had been standing a few steps behind, watched the heartbreaking scene. Without saying a word, she turned around and walked straight toward the administrative block. Jeffrey didn't even notice. About 15 minutes later, a woman wearing glasses hurried out of the bursar's office. Mr. Jeffrey Johnson? Jeffrey looked surprised. Yes. The bursar would like to see you. Confused, he followed her. Jessica walked beside him. Inside the office, the bursar smiled warmly. Your daughter's school fees have been paid in full. Jeffrey blinked.
I'm sorry.
I don't understand. The bursar pointed toward the receipt. Paid. Completely. No balance. Jessica gasped. Daddy. He looked around the office. Who paid? The bursar smiled and pointed toward the doorway. Standing there with a gentle smile was Temi. She held the payment receipt in one hand. Jeffrey stood speechless. You.
Temi nodded.
I couldn't pretend I didn't hear your daughter's conversation. But, she interrupted him softly. No child should be denied an education because of money. Jessica ran toward Temi and hugged her tightly. Thank you so much, Auntie. Temi smiled and hugged her back. Study hard. I will. I promise. Jeffrey's eyes became moist. I don't know how to repay you.
Temi smiled.
You already did. He looked confused. When you fixed my car this morning, you expected nothing in return. She paused before continuing. Kindness has a way of coming back to us. For the first time in many months, Jeffrey felt a small spark of hope. As they walked out of the school together, none of them realized that what had begun as a simple act of kindness would soon grow into a relationship that would test love, trust, loyalty, and the true meaning of family. Jeffrey thought Temi's kindness had ended with paying Jessica's school fees, but he had no idea that one invitation was about to change their lives forever. What awaits them inside Temi's luxurious mansion? Is she simply being kind? Or is destiny bringing two broken hearts together? And could this be the fresh start Jeffrey and Jessica have been praying for? Don't miss the next part, where unexpected emotions begin to grow, laughter fills a lonely home, and a new journey unfolds. If you're enjoying this heartwarming Nigerian family drama, please like this video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next exciting part of the story. Thank you.